How people communicate with one another varies widely from culture to culture. One way to reach such an understanding is through the high and low context culture framework developed by anthropologist Edward T. Hall. In 1976, Hall proposed that culture can be divided into two categories, high context and low context, which are meant to highlight differences in verbal and nonverbal communication. High context cultures will use communication that focuses on underlying context, meaning, and tone in the message, and not just on words themselves. Low context cultures expect communication to be explicitly stated so that there is no risk of confusion, and if a message isn't clear enough, this will slow down this whole process of communication. Countries are usually a combination of both high and low context characteristics, but tend to have a preferred side. Focusing on this context communication in regard to France, we can say that France is a culture which is in the middle of high and low context cultures, a little closer to the high context, because for example in France, in the metro, you will not see guidelines telling you how to behave, where to walk, on which side to walk, such as in London for example, so it would be implicit. And things tend to be really implicit in France, even though French people have a strong power distance and individualistic approach. And if French people feel bad, they will let you think that everything is okay because of this indirect and implicit communication that is privileged.
In Senegal, we use high context communication because we want to let everybody feel comfortable when discussing with us. We don't want to irritate people. That's why we talk with them with tact, using nice words and a nice tone of voice. And instead of saying things directly, we try to see how we can simplify it by using gentle words to not irritate the person. And that's why in my country we use a lot the euphemism figure of speech.
Colombia, like France, has a high context communication style for several reasons. First, relationships play a fundamental role when getting things done as a group, and disagreement inside the group is sometimes taken personally rather than professional points of view. We also emphasize nonverbal communication, and we rely on contextual communication to express our ideas and thoughts, making context even more important than words themselves. We avoid direct communication and frankness, as we think it can sound too rude. And maybe this is a key difference between France and Colombia, as the former is more known for having direct comments and being more rude. When it comes to social life, we prefer long-term relationships, slowly built but based on trust, unlike long context cultures that usually are inclined to have shorter relationships and task focused. In a work environment, a low context culture like Germany expects work before friendship and earning of credibility through performance, formal agreements, and efficient management of time. On the other hand, Colombian culture seeks to create a cordial and congenial atmosphere where credibility is earned due to the relationship.
Finns have all the characteristics of low context communication. We use explicit communication style, and because of that, we are sometimes seen as rude or impolite, even though we don't mean it. We tend to speak with more reason than emotion and prefer listening over talking. We are very honest and realistic society, and we consider verbal agreements and promises as binding. Finnish people use more verbal communication than non-verbal communication. We don't make large gestures and we don't use facial expressions that much, and because of that, many people can think that it's hard to read us. Finns also respect their own space, and it is highly important to respect it. So, when communicating with a Frenchman, a Finnish person needs to read between the lines, as France has a high context communication style. Communication in France is more ambiguous, meaning that introductions are more figure it out as you go mindset, which is very common for high context cultures.
This dimension refers to how people communicate and interact with one another in their society. Specific cultures keep work and personal lives separate, and they believe that relationships do not have much of an impact on work objectives. And although good relationships are important, they believe that people can work together without having a good relationship. These cultures don't see an overlap between the two spheres, public and private, and they focus more on the goal than the relationship itself. If you want to work effectively on this type of culture, we recommend you to stick to your agendas and plans, focus on the task rather than the relationship, and be precise and direct. On the other hand, diffuse cultures face an overlap between their work and personal life. They believe that good relationships are vital to meeting business objectives, and that their relationships with others will be the same, whether they are at work or meeting socially. People in this type of culture spend time outside work hours with colleagues and clients to develop their relationships. If you want to fit in this type of culture, you must develop your relationships to get the best outcome possible.
Diffuse cultures such as France accept, understand and prefer indirect communication. French people have big area of privacy, and that's why it can be difficult, very difficult, to interact and get to know French people, and that is also why they're seen as not nice, not super welcoming, and even sometimes rude people. And the guest of a French person will definitely be a close one, because French people, unlike in the US, are seen as coconuts. They are hard to get to know, but with time you can build a relationship with them that will definitely last forever. And it is very important for French to build up a close relationship in business life as well. This requires a lot of information that has to be exchanged in advance of a business deal, and some may look irrelevant, but they are really important for them. So guys, if you want to deal with French people, first let's have a drink with them and become their friends, and then you can have a good business deal.
In Finland, we handle relationships in specific ways. Our public space is wide, so it's common that we have big friend groups, but only few dear friends. Our area of privacy is very small, and only family and the closest friends can get there. In order to make friends in France, it's very important to be active and take the initiative to approach other French people. This is outside of the comfort zone of Finns, but it will be worth it, since once you get to know French people, they are known to be very loyal as they have a diffuse culture.
So, in Senegal, we have a specific culture. People are easily accepted in our circle, people are very kind and open, and we call Senegal Pays de la Teranga, which means in English, country of hospitality, because people are very welcoming. Even in their houses, you can go and come whenever you want. They are open and very kind.
Colombia is a diffuse society where people see an overlap between their work and personal life. We believe that good relationships are vital to achieve objectives, and that's why we have the tendency to treat colleagues as friends and spend time with them outside work hours. As we struggle setting boundaries between work and social life, we usually depend on in-group harmony to get the job done. And we won't feel comfortable working with someone with which we have a bad relationship or is not familiar enough for us. Also, France, like Colombia, is considered a diffuse culture. So if you're planning to work on this type of culture, it is extremely recommended to build your relationships before starting to set objectives. Casual plans such as hanging out with friends or even going to a party represent an opportunity to improve the performance of the group and the final results.
What is the individualism dimension of Hofstede? We have two types of culture, individualistic culture and collectivistic culture. In each society, we can define the type of culture that is predominant. So, what can be the difference between individualism and collectivism? For individualism, we have the word individual, which means one and only. In individualistic society, people are personal goal oriented. They are comfortable working alone. They don't see any problem in working autonomously and not being part of a group because in everything they do, they try to see if they meet their personal needs first. And in collectivism, we have collective, which means a group, a whole. In collectivistic society, people are group goal oriented. They can sacrifice their own interests for the group's interest, and the team success is what matters the most. So we can say in individualistic society, people wonder first about their self-actualization, and for collectivistic society, people care first about the team's success before taking care of their personal interests.
France, with a score of 71, which is rather high, is shown to be an individualist society. Parents, for example, make their children emotionally independent with regard to groups in which they belong. This means that everyone is taking care of his own business and his own family, and everyone is striving for his own success. There is no really collectivism. Being able to have and express your personal opinion is very important for French people. And even in group works, the tasks are divided between the member of the group, and everyone will do his own part on his own, and then the task will be put together and individual works will create the group work, but nobody will work together as a team. Everybody will do individually his own work.
At a score of 13 on Hofstede's model, Colombia is amongst the lowest individualistic scores. In other words, it lies amongst the most collectivistic cultures in the world. There are some reasons why this happens. First, we are usually born and raised into extended families, and protection towards our families is taught since childhood. This element makes us think in terms of we identity rather than I identity. Since the Colombians are a highly collectivistic people, belonging to an in-group and aligning yourself with that group's opinion is very important. We can even sacrifice personal desires for the good of our own group. The key factor within the in-group is loyalty. Loyalty provides groups to avoid conflicts and helps strengthen relationships. When Colombians face an issue in a group, all group members gather and provide their input to create a solution. As Manon mentioned, France doesn't follow this pattern as it is an individualistic country, where children are raised to be emotionally independent with regards to the groups in which they belong.
Finland is highly individualistic society. According to Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory, Finns score 63 in individualism. We like to take care of ourselves and immediate families, and we don't like to be dependent on others. Finnish people are very work-oriented and strive to succeed well on our own. We like to do things as I and not as we, and this is reflected to the fact that we don't easily accept others' help, as we want to survive on our own. Also, at school, we prefer to do individual assignments over group work because students want to have control of their own part. Both Finnish and French cultural freedom of the individual is strongly presented. Compared to Finland, French people express personal opinions even more, and it's really important to have a say in everything, as they are even more individualistic society than Finland.
So, my country, Senegal, is a collectivist society where people do everything together. We live in big families with grandparents, fathers, mothers, uncles, aunt, cousin, everybody in the family. And at lunch, we eat together in a big bowl with everybody. Even at school, we organize group work to revise together to help each other because collectivism means sharing. So we do everything together, and at work, we have that family spirit with the employees, and it's very cool. Everybody is working in coherence.
Next, we're going to look at Edward T. Hall's model of monochronic and polychronic time perceptions. Edward T. Hall was an anthropologist and cultural researcher born in 1914. He observed the many difficulties that created failures of intercultural communication. From his research, T. Hall found out that each country has different attitudes towards time. According to his model, time is perceived in two ways. There are monochronic cultures, such as Finland, who tend to do just one thing at a time, and then there are polychronic cultures, such as Latin America, who prefer to do multiple things at once. Deadlines and clear schedules are very important for monochronic-oriented cultures, because for them time is very limited. Monochronic countries are, for example, Germany, Switzerland, and Scandinavian countries. Monochronic culture characteristics are that these countries are very patient, introvert, and they're used to work fixed hours. Whereas monochronic time-oriented cultures like to do one thing at a time, polychronic cultures do many things at once. It doesn't matter if there are many things happening at the same time, and one thing can be started even though others are not finished yet. Polychronic cultures tend to be extrovert, impatient, and they work any hours and can talk for hours.
So for monochronic vs polychronic, French people tend to be monochronic intellectually, meaning that they really like to have structured plans, schedule and timetables, but they actually quite often don't stick to plans. They're most likely to do several things at a time and can talk for hours and hours, creating a rather long-term relationship than short ones. So French tend to be monochronic intellectually, but polychronic in actions.
Setting a meeting at 3 p.m. when you actually know that people will arrive at 3:30 is an implicit rule among Colombians that reflects how this country is a polychronic culture. In polychronic time cultures like Colombia, meetings may start late, run overtime, and allow outside issues to interrupt. We easily change plans, and we think human relationships are even more important than the task as such. The French have a much rather polychronic tendency like us, and you can see similar traits with Colombia when treating time flexibly, handling many tasks simultaneously, and even putting personal life over professional commitments. We previously mentioned that Colombia and France have a high context communication style, and this usually translates into polychronic time handling. So both cultures are relatively similar when it comes to temporal structure and work and personal time separability.
Finland is a very monochronic country. Time is very precious for us, and we have a time is money attitude. We see time as a linear and with a definitive beginning and ending. We are always looking for the future and planning next things, since planning gives us a sense of control. We are work-oriented, and education and work is considered as very important for us. For example, when you're walking in the city of Helsinki, you can see that people are always running from one place to another with a takeaway coffee in their hands.
So Senegal is a polychronic society. We can do many things at the same time. We are very polychronic. Even we have some exception at work and at school because we have to respect the hours, the rules, and so on. But generally, we do things as we desire, not respecting any guideline. We can start one thing here and leave it, go do something else. We don't say that I have started it, I have to finish it. No, we can start, stop, start another things, and so on. Very, very polychronic.
So, to conclude, remember to always put into practice the 4 R's approach. Always recognize, respect, reconcile, and realize about the cultural differences. Don't assume all cultures are the same around the world, and not only because of the language differences, but also because there are visual and invisible elements that underlie each context. Try to avoid preconceptions and stereotypes, and although high anxiety is normal when communicating across cultures, do your best to enjoy the experience.